One flowed southward, passing golden-domed cities and ancient monasteries reflected upon the waters of Ukraine. The other turned eastward, opening into vast steppes, solemn fortresses, and grand squares tied to Russian power across generations. In their silent currents, one can see the reflection of two nations, born from the same root, yet carried toward fates entirely their own. Amid the frozen Valdai highlands of northern Russia, where endless pine forests stretch toward the horizon, two of Europe's great rivers begin their quiet origins. The Dnieper and the Volga. In the stillness of Valdai's forests, one can almost hear the faint murmur of their first currents. The Dnieper and the Volga, born from the same source, yet destined to flow toward two entirely different fates. The Dnieper winds through Ukraine like a spiritual axis, a place where history and culture have settled and deepened through the centuries. It carries within it a rhythm uniquely Ukrainian, echoing the ancient harbors that once welcomed northern traders traveling south toward the Black Sea. Across its vast, open stretches of water, migrating birds sweep in long ribbons of flight, their shadows gliding over the deep blue surface. In the year 988, Grand Prince Vladimir held the mass baptism of the Rus in the Dnieper. That moment not only marked the adoption of Christianity, but opened the spiritual world and cultural trajectory that continue to shape Ukraine to this day. Unlike symbols of imperial power, the Dnieper holds a softer, more open presence in the Ukrainian psyche. It is a gathering place for communities, a wellspring of inspiration for artists, and a space where people come to reconnect with nature. At night, the lights from modern bridges cast shimmering trails across the river, creating a scene that is both peaceful and full of life. Together, these layers form a distinct identity that Ukraine preserves as the deepest part of its soul. The Volga flows through the heart of Russia like a giant lifeline, linking Yaroslavl, Nizhny Novgorod, Kazan, and Volgograd before fading into the distant Caspian Sea. It is not only the longest river in Europe, but the axis of Russian power for centuries. A waterway along which dynasties fortified their rule and bound the vast west to the endless east. In 1552, Muscovite forces crossed the river toward Kazan, marking the beginning of territorial expansion and the consolidation of a unified nation. Nearly 400 years later, in Stalingrad, the Volga witnessed some of the fiercest battles of World War II, moments where Russian courage and endurance were carved irreversibly into world history. For this reason, the Volga is often called the Mother River, a symbol of the strength and steadfast spirit of the Russian people. Yet beyond its grandeur, the Volga also carries the gentle rhythm of riverside villages, where wooden boats rest along the banks scented with wheat fields, and the faint aroma of river fish drifting on the wind. On summer mornings, the water lies still like a mirror, reflecting clouds floating across the wide, open skies of the steppe. And when autumn arrives, the birch forests turn gold, their reflections trailing across the river like soft ribbons of fire. This is the tender side of the Volga, where power meets serenity, shaping the majestic and contemplative beauty of Russia's Mother River. Resting along the banks of the Dnieper, Ukraine's capital Kyiv carries an ancient and dignified beauty, forever oriented toward enlightenment and an unyielding spirit of self-determination. Street, Sophia's cathedral, crowned with radiant golden domes, remains the spiritual heart of Kyiv, where Byzantine mosaics recount the dawn of the Rus and the centuries of prosperity shaped by trade, scholarship, and artistic brilliance. On the nearby hillsides, the Pechersk Lavra unfolds with its bell towers, churches, and sacred caves that guard relics preserved for 1,000 years. Maidan Square stretches wide under the sunlight, a gathering place where people perform, debate, and express their aspirations for freedom. A tradition that has bound itself to the city across generations. Along the Dnieper's riverbank, street artists perform freely, while children run across the stone steps that overlook the water. On cobblestone streets, small cafes nestle beside elegant European-style buildings from centuries past, creating a gentle fusion of the old and the new. When dusk settles, the lights from bridges and church domes shimmer across the river's surface, transforming Kyiv into a symphony of color, sound, and an enduring optimism that refuses to fade. Kyiv stands as a living emblem of the independence and creative spirit that lie at the core of the Ukrainian identity, resilient through every tide of history. The Moskva River flows through Moscow like a current heavy with history, quietly embracing the Russian capital before merging into the vast network of canals beyond. Moscow rises sternly beside its waters, carrying the solemn posture of a city inseparable from its long lineage of power and statehood. Along the river piers beyond the city center, the water thickens with the color of earth, its ripples brushing gently against slow-moving boats that seem to drift in contemplation of the city's own past. From afar, the Kremlin and Red Square emerge like the beating heart of Russian authority. Ancient and modern structures stand side by side, their domes and bell towers etched sharply against the sky, recounting centuries of strategy, ambition, and statecraft. On red-paved streets, rows of trees whisper in the wind, while victory monuments rise in stoic silence, shaping an atmosphere of resilience and unbroken will, echoes of a capital burdened with the weight of history. To the traveler's eye, Moscow emanates a gravity and steadfastness that stands in stark contrast to Kyiv's openness and creative flourish. Yet it is precisely this quiet solemnity that preserves the soul of ancient Rus, leaving an aura of dignity and subdued strength in every corner of the city. When night descends, Moscow ignites under a soft gold glow as thousands of lights wash over its wide boulevards and cathedral domes. The riverbank falls silent, and the water shimmers like a long mirror, reflecting the silhouette of the Kremlin towers and the illuminated bridges that span its course. Just a short distance from Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, the city of Chernihiv rises in quiet grace along the Desna River, the longest tributary of the Dnieper. Its sacred architecture bears the unmistakable imprint of ancient Rus. Onion-shaped domes, thick, whitewashed walls, and soft, rounded arches that seem to breathe with the passing centuries. Red brick, limestone, and delicate Byzantine motifs blend across the walls of the Trinity and Yelets monasteries, creating a serene, timeless beauty that glows beneath the northern sun. But Chernihiv's allure extends far beyond its architecture or tranquil landscapes. This is a place where religious life continues in humble, enduring rhythms, processions honoring saints, harvest festivals, and quiet prayers offered for peace. None of these rituals are extravagant. Instead, they reflect a freedom of faith deeply woven into the Ukrainian spirit, a respect for tradition held side by side with the unwavering autonomy of the community. By the banks of the Volga, Yaroslavl appears like a quiet, contemplative gem where time seems to flow slowly over ancient rooftops. The city was once a center of power for the Vladimir Suzdal Principality, and it still preserves the golden traces of its earliest eras. The smooth stone squares, churches crowned with silver and gold domes glowing in the morning sun, and tall bell towers rise like milestones, marking every chapter of history. Ancient Russian architecture in Yaroslavl reveals itself through thick, white church walls, onion-shaped domes reaching upward, and soft archways curving in harmonious lines. Red brick, limestone, and Byzantine motifs are intricately arranged across the facades, while slender bell towers and deep green rooftops complete the timeless silhouette. When dawn touches the Volga, a silver ribbon stretches across the water as if the river itself were whispering stories of old festivals, bustling trading ports, and royal councils that once shaped Yaroslavl's destiny. Along the riverfront, the sound of water lapping against boat hulls blends with the wind, allowing travelers to easily imagine wooden merchant ships and envoys journeying up and down the Volga in a distant age. As the Dnieper flows southward, it opens into the city of Dnipro, where a modern pulse merges seamlessly with layers of tradition cherished by Ukrainians for generations. The river, wide as a sheet of silver, embraces the city and mirrors its gleaming glass towers, bustling ports, and long bridges that sketch the bold lines of a new era. Parks along the riverbank stretch out in green carpets, with whispering birch trees and red brick paths, where people jog, stroll, or gather in the soft light of late afternoon. The riverside market is the soul of daily life. The scent of fresh pastries, fruits, handmade crafts, and lively conversations blend into a vibrant symphony of Ukraine. Even as a major industrial center, Dnipro still preserves its folk character through seasonal festivals, traditional games, and its long-standing river culture of fishing and community. The Dnieper continues its southward course toward Khortytsia, a living sanctuary of nature and history at the heart of Ukraine. Ancient oak forests, rolling green hills, and scattered black rock formations rising from the silver water create a landscape both untamed and powerful. It was here that Cossack armies built their fortresses, trained on horseback, and raised their banners over wooden warboats, forging a legacy of freedom and warrior spirit that Ukrainians still proudly carry today. Walking along the island's winding trails, one can almost hear the echo of horses' hooves, see banners fluttering sharply in the wind, and imagine the spirited shouts of Cossack troops during their drills. While many neighboring regions shaped their identities around centralized authority or imperial expansion, Khortytsia stands as a spiritual emblem where independence, strength, and national pride converge into a living legend of Ukraine. Red Square unfolds at the heart of Moscow like a vast stone stage where Russian power and history converge into one space. Dark granite slabs stretch beneath your feet, cold and unyielding, echoing the very temperament of this nation. On either side, monumental structures rise with solemn grandeur. The deep red Kremlin walls run the length of the square, while the Spasskaya Tower stands guard, its ancient clock echoing the steady heartbeat of Russia. Opposite it, St. Basil's Cathedral emerges, with its multicolored domes touching the skyline. The onion-shaped domes twist gently like flames bent by the eastern wind, telling a story shaped by Russian craftsmanship, Byzantine artistry, and the ancient traditions of Eurasia. When the sun rises, light glints off the glazed tiles and stonework, making the cathedral appear as though it has stepped out of a fairy tale. Along the square, footsteps echo against the stone, creating the feeling that time is shifting through overlapping layers of memory. It was here that coronations, military parades, grand fairs, and the gatherings of ordinary people once unfolded during the nation's defining moments. Red Square remains a mirror reflecting the Russian soul, powerful, solemn, and profoundly shaped by the weight of history. The Kremlin rises with solemn authority beside the Moskva River, a monumental creation shaped by centuries of Russian power. Its deep red walls stretch in a great triangular sweep, each watchtower crowned with a gleaming golden star that cuts a sharp, ancient silhouette against the sky. The Grand Kremlin Palace, with its polished stone facade, opens like a testament to the splendor of the Tsars. Not far away, the old cathedrals of Cathedral Square rise with radiant golden domes, the very places where monarchs were crowned and patriarchs once led sacred rites. The Tsar Bell and Tsar Cannon rest silently in the courtyard, symbols of an unbounded desire for strength. Above them all, the Ivan the Great Bell Tower reaches into the pale sky, its chimes once marking the defining moments of the nation. The Kremlin is not only Russia's political center, it is a spiritual heart where history, art, and authority merge into a single current. Independence Square is the vibrant heart of Kiev, a place where the city's rhythm folds itself into every passing footstep. In the morning, sunlight pours over statues and landmarks, casting interwoven patches of brightness and shadow across the wide, open plaza. The sound of footsteps, the soft roll of wheels over stone, and the laughter of children blend with street musicians, creating movements that are lively yet never rushed. People sit at outdoor cafes, sipping tea and talking, while performers sing, dance, and add layers of artistry to the space. The square is not only a setting for daily life, but also a symbol of Kiev's freedom and openness. Across its time-worn paving stones, one can sense history resting atop the present. From the sunlight striking the monuments to the long shadows stretching from the rooftops at dusk. Walking through the square, you do more than witness the city. You feel its pulse, its pride, and the Ukrainian spirit of independence carried on every breeze. Stretching along the banks of the Volga, Kazan rises like a mighty fortress where the vast river wraps itself around the ancient city. This is a land marked deeply by Russian power. In 1552, Muscovy forces advanced into Kazan, ushering in an era of eastward expansion and laying the foundations for an empire that would stretch across centuries. The wide and powerful Volga witnessed every march, every banner snapping in the wind, and every hoof striking the riverfront moments that forever altered the fate of this region. Walking along the riverbank, The water reflects golden sunsets against towering domes, creating a scene both majestic and tinged with the solitude of a frontier land. From afar, merchant boats once arrived carrying salt, wool, and spices, breathing a lively pulse into the city. More than a witness to conquest and authority, Kazan also embodies the convergence of two great cultures, where Tatar and Russian identities blend within every stone facade and ancient dome. Cherkasy stretches along the Dnieper like a peaceful ribbon of land in central Ukraine, where the broad water mirrors birch trees and red-tiled rooftops. Its atmosphere carries the gentle calm of the lowlands, where a slow, steady rhythm merges with rustling leaves and the familiar sounds of small riverside markets. Along the Dnieper's edge, Shevchenko Park opens with green lawns and shaded paths, where residents stroll, fish, or gather with family. From a nearby hill, the Kobzar Monument looks out over the city, recalling the cultural traditions and love of freedom that have defined Cherkasy for centuries. The city also holds the heritage of old Cossack communities, from seasonal festivals to folk songs that still rise from quiet courtyards at dusk. Cherkasy is neither loud nor hurried, but quiet, natural, and sincere, a place where past and present mingle in church bells, the scent of fresh bread, and the breeze drifting in from the Dnieper. It is a portrait of everyday Ukraine, rich in character, where gentle beauty spreads from the river's surface to every corner of the streets. Nizhny Novgorod rises along the Volga as a center of commerce and authority that once stood as one of Russia's essential strongholds. The vast river opens before the city, where long docks are lined with great wooden vessels, their masts reaching skyward like invisible pillars supporting the harbor. Here, a brisk and orderly rhythm fills the air, as though every ripple on the Volga moves in step with the long arc of Russian history. From this point, wheat, salt, wool, and iron were shipped toward Moscow or carried downriver to Kazan and the east, turning the Volga into a lifeline that spread goods and strategic knowledge across the land. Along the riverbank, stone-paved squares lie beneath the shadows of moored ships, while tall bell towers cast their reflections across the wide, glimmering water. The heavy fall of anchors, the scrape of taut ropes along wooden hulls, and the shouts of sailors blend into a living symphony that still carries the calm, grounded spirit of the region. With its historic Makariev Fair, once drawing merchants from across Russia and Europe, Nizhny Novgorod remains a symbol of the nation's enduring strength and industrious heart. Kakhovka rests along the lower Dnieper as a gentle riverside town where the water mirrors the open skies of southern Ukraine. Small wooden docks scatter the shoreline, where locals row out at dawn to cast their nets into the silver-tinted river. By afternoon, breezes drift in from the water, carrying the scent of damp grass and fields of grain. Tree-lined streets lead toward a quiet central square, where low houses and balconies filled with flowers create the warm familiarity of a town that prefers to live slowly. Along the Dnieper's edge, a long riverfront park opens with green lawns and paths overlooking the water, a favorite gathering place for families, elders, and children on summer evenings. Kakhovka's history lingers in its corners, from stories of Cossack communities guarding the river routes to memories of merchant caravans pausing here before continuing their journey downstream. The town carries the softness of southern Ukraine, simple, tender, deeply connected to the Dnieper, the lifeline that has nourished Kakhovka for generations. Kremenchuk rests quietly beside the Dnieper, where industrial life blends with the calm of the Ukrainian lowlands. In the morning, sunlight spreads across bridges and river docks, highlighting the soft curve of the water and the willow trees that trail along the banks. Cargo boats drift slowly along the river, reflecting the steady yet lively rhythm of the people who live and work here. In the parks by the water, shaded paths lead toward the central square, where the sounds of the morning market mingle with birdsong and the laughter of children. Wide streets lined with straight rows of trees reveal the familiar image of a town that moves at an unhurried pace. Small cafes play gentle music, residents stroll by the river, and fishing boats cast their nets as the sun begins to set. When sunset turns the Dnieper golden orange, Kremenchuk appears as a tender and welcoming city, where the river carries both the breath of daily labor and the warmth of everyday life. Samara stretches along the Volga as a broad and open landscape where the vast river reflects the vibrant rhythm of life in central Russia. In the morning, sunlight reaches the old houses and buildings from the era of the Tsars, bringing out the gentle curve of the water and the quiet wooden docks that drift along its edge. Along the Samorskaya embankment, residents stroll beneath rustling birch trees, children run across the stone paths, and river cruise boats glide past, leaving long silver trails across the surface. Samara carries within it a meeting point between industry and the arts. Wide squares, graceful old theaters, and neighborhoods shaped by 19th century architecture create a calm and elegant atmosphere. Near the river, the scent of damp wind blends with the aroma of coffee from small shops that open early, forming the unhurried rhythm that belongs only to this city. When evening approaches, the sun falls onto the Volga and turns the river into a streak of red flame, while Samara comes alive with music, song, and outdoor gatherings. The city does not boast or shout for attention, yet it always keeps the warmth and gentleness of a place that grew up alongside the Volga. Every dock, every tree canopy, and every street corner carries the enduring heartbeat of the people who live beside this great river. Kherson rests in the wide, lower reaches of the Dnieper before it flows into the Black Sea, opening a rustic and free landscape characteristic of southern Ukraine. The city rises with broad tree-lined avenues and long stretches of river docks, where the air carries a mix of sea breeze and the earthy scent of river silt. In the morning, fishing boats, wooden skiffs, and slow-moving cargo barges drift by, reflecting a quiet yet deeply resonant rhythm across the surface of the river. Along the shore, a spacious riverside park spreads beneath the shade of willow trees, where residents rest in the breeze, children play, and elders share old stories, while birdsong fills the air, The waterside market brings the fragrances of fruit, vegetables, and fresh river fish, forming a simple yet distinctly southern portrait of daily life. Kherson still bears the marks of the old port routes that once linked Ukraine to the Black Sea, from weathered brick warehouses to narrow streets leading down to the docks. By late afternoon, the setting sun falls over the Dnieper in ribbons of gold and red, bathing the entire city in warm, glowing light. Astrakhan lies at the end of the Volga, where the great river widens into broad, shimmering waters before merging with the Caspian Sea. The city carries a distinctive blend of Russian, Persian, and southern nomadic influences that shape its character and its rhythm of life. At the city's center, the Astrakhan Fortress and the bell tower of the Assumption Cathedral rise with solemn grace against the clear blue sky. Streets around the old market still echo with the spirit of ancient trade, where spices, salted fish, and fruits from the southern steppes were once exchanged among Russian, Persian, and Tatar merchants. The scent of fish, drifting from small river ports, mixes with the calls of vendors and footsteps across stone pavements, forming a unique cadence born from the river's lower reaches. Astrakhan is not loud, yet it carries a quiet depth where culture and history flow naturally into the surrounding landscape. The entire city reflects the identity of a land that once stood as the gateway guiding Russia toward the southern world. After a journey stretching thousands of kilometers, the Volga slowly widens as it reaches the Caspian Sea, where its silver waters embrace the final harbors along its path. Here, the Volga becomes a meeting point between Russian power and everyday life. Merchant vessels once laden with salt, grain, wool, and iron arrived in steady flows, creating the vibrant rhythm of Europe's largest river. Green riverbanks, old watchtowers, and wooden houses, softened by moss, reflect the glow of sunset across the water, shaping a scene that resembles a painted masterpiece. The sound of waves tapping against wooden hulls, the clang of anchors and ropes, and the scent of sea salt mixing with folk music and singing create a unique symphony of the river's lower reaches. The Caspian estuary does more than mark the end of the river's long journey. It unites trade, culture, and the Russian spirit into a seamless layer of living history. It is here that one feels most clearly the essence of the Mother River, powerful and quiet, solitary and proud, carrying within it the strength and ambition of a formidable nation. From a single origin, the Dnieper and the Volga unfolded into two different worlds, each reflecting the journey of Ukraine and Russia. While one river moves toward freedom and community, the other flows through vast realms of authority and identity, affirming a simple truth: shared roots do not guarantee the same destiny.